Welcome to Daf in Hand, Masechtes Zevachim Per Aleph Daf Gimel. Yotzmuvnech Hashem L'Kei V'L'Kei V'Sayid May Hashem give us merit and wisdom to teach and understand today's Daf. Today's Daf is dedicated to memory of my father, Shlomo Ber Baruch, Yehi Zechvei Baruch. If you'd like to ask me a question or send a dedication or a sponsorship, you could reach me at dafinhand@gmail.com. So, we opened the Masechta yesterday talking about if you bring a korban and you bring the korban wrongly, such as a chatas in the name of an oila or other forms of other wrong intentions, the korban is either totally possible or only disenfranchised and stays kaddish, but is not relevant to it doesn't count for the owner. And then the Gemara went on to say, however, if someone spaced out by the korban, then that would be okay. And we brought a difference between spaced out by a korban and spaced out by a get of a woman, explaining that if you space out by a korban, the default and the momentum will carry you forward, then it still is kosher. A woman is not meant to be divorced, so therefore the momentum will carry her forward and she will stay married. And any get written has to be proactively written properly. And if it's spaced out, it won't be effective. Yesterday we sourced the halacha, the din, that if a korban is done spaced out, it is still kosher. Now we will source if a get is written spaced out, it is possible because the momentum is that a woman is not to be divorced, and you have to proactively divorce her. So we're doing Daf Gimel. We will start Daf Base, 7 lines from the bottom. Vegabe get. Now we're going to discuss the get. Vegabe get, the stomach apostle minola. Where do we know that a get written without any intentions is not valid? Because, like we said, the momentum and the default of a woman is not to be divorced. We're going to attempt to bring it from the following Mishnahs, which has 4 different clauses, and we're going to try each clause, and we're not going to be satisfied. The Tanan, somebody was going on the market, from Makrin, and he heard it was people dictating, Ish ploin girish ploinis, this man is being megarish, divorcing this woman, coming from his place, and this man says, hey, you know what, I come from there, I'm going to buy this used get, and I'll save myself a buck. And let me use it. It says, you may not use it for the get. So therefore, you would see that a get written, this is a get without any person, a get written spaced out is no good. More no. No, why maybe this is no good? We're talking about, let's say, a scribe school, and there's this it was not written for any form of divorce altogether. That's how you use possible. But the next clause, let's try the next clause. Yes, Rakan. Cost of the garage is ishta. If somebody wants to wrote to divorce his wife, nimlach, and then he changed his mind. Meanwhile, Matzah Beniroy is his city dweller from the same city, which needs to be written into the get. And he says, my name is your name, and your wife's name is the same as my wife's name. I'll buy off your get for half price, and let me use your get. Plus the garish way. You may not be megarish. So here too, it was written for one person, and it's possible somebody else. You see, it was not proactively written, it's possible. And one answers, no, this won't work either. You know why this one is no good? Because it's specifically written for a different woman. But had it been written, maybe if it's written without any thought altogether, maybe that is kosher. So you still need to source it. Elamaha, we're going to source it from the following. Yes, Al Khan, yes, he has 2 wives. Shishmai Sayim Shabbos with similar name. And you because the Garish is a girl, and he wanted to be Megarish in his mind, the older, the bigger lady. Lo yigarish b'sektan may not be megarish, may not use this get to divorce the younger one. Why? So you see that if I didn't have the proper intention, it is possible not good. And so learn from over here the spaced out, the unintentional get is no good. More no. Dil Mishana Hasam, you know why this clause is no good? The integrated Shem Gershon Dahi, because it's specifically written for the Gershon of the older lady. And the younger one was not written for her. So it's worse than saying a get which is unintentional. This is specifically wrongly intentioned. So I'm still looking for the source. So perhaps the fourth one. Elamaha Yesra kan Omer Lilavla by told the Sefer. Kosev, you write the get. And then I will choose laser shirts a garish boy. So here it's not for any specific woman, and yet it's no good. Possibly garish boy. Maybe this would be a proof. No, this too is not a proof. Why? The Mashana Hasam, the Ain Brera, we would hold that the concept of Brera, which is for another time, but mainly means that Brera is retroactive decision. For example, if somebody dies and his two sons divide the properties 3 months later, we don't say, do we say that it's retroactively divided, or is it divided from now? And certain can have various legal implications. Or if somebody has a pound of fruit and he wants to give truma, he'll say, I'll eat part of it now. Tomorrow I'll decide which one was the truma. That's the form of brera. So if we don't say brera over here, then this get was written for one of these women, but we don't know which one. That's why you're not allowed to use it. So where do we source that an unintentional get may not be used? Elamaha. This answer we stay with. Case of types of git, and somebody who's writing the basic contents of git in the outlines. You must leave over a place for the man's name, and the woman's name, in a space for the Adam, in a space to write in the time, or maybe the remorse or Shmuel. After also must leave over the following verse, which is the most crucial verse of the entire get, Mokum of saying Hare at Materis L'chol Adam. So you see over here that if you're going to write a get, you cannot just write it willy-nilly and fill it out. You have to leave out these parts, because these parts can only be written when I know which woman is going to be written for. Showing you that a get written without intention is not valid. Only you have to be intentional and specific, and only then will it be valid. Okay, so we've done our job. We have sourced that although yesterday we learned that korban unintentional will be kosher, a get unintentional will be possible. That was the first stira of the Friday night kumdus which you mentioned. Now we're going to get to the second stira that was asked. Before I start, I want to give you an introduction. We have a concept of diminei machrov, the loy minei loy machrov, meaning when is something disruptive, if it's relevant, if it's part of the equation, if it's something relevant to the situation, then it can be disruptive. If something which is totally like a non sequitur, non-related to the issue, cannot be disruptive. That's what we're saying now. As an example, you have two adults, and we're trying to accomplish something with one of them, and the other one gets mixed in somehow. I would say over there perhaps that it's relevant, and it could be disruptive. But if we have an adult and a toddler, and the toddler somehow gets mixed in, we're not going to even give it any credence whatsoever. It is not relevant. Therefore, it is not disruptive. The loy mine, if it's not of its same kind, loy machrav, it doesn't disrupt. It's not part of the solution, not part of the situation, and that is a concept of which we're going to deal with now heavily in the rest of the page. See Rama Milsachrit. He asked the second question, second stira, the second disagreement. Me Omer Rav Yehuda Marav. Did Rav Yehuda Marav truly say, which he said later on Daf Zayin, Chatas sheshach l'shem oile, Chatas which I shechted for an oile, that would be pasul. Why? Because it's irrelevant. They're both korbanos. I wanted chatas. I may do something in the same ballpark in oile. Therefore, it's no good. However, shach l'shem chulin. If I take a chatos, which is a korban, and I shechter for chulin, which is mundane, it's just something for the butcher. I'm gonna take it home and sell it to the local grocery. It's chulin, it's irrelevant. So therefore, not even the same ballpark. That would be kasher. Almi, you see from over here the concept. Dimine, if it's the same, if the same relevance, if it's relevant, machriv, it will disrupt or will be part of the issue. Machriv ba. Lav mine, if it's not related, loy machriv ba, it will not disrupt. That's what that's part of, that's the first step. That loy mine, loy machriv. Ramin, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to ask you a question. We have another get story called a get isha, a get written for not a woman at all. Puzzle and a better example of finishing a if a person writes a get. He happens to have, unfortunately, a goyish wife, and he's going to divorce his goyish wife. And then he decides, you know what? He realizes the goyish wife does not need to be. You don't write a get for a goyish wife. He's going to use it for a regular married wife. Vishana is possible, and so the question is, why would this be possible? If I wrote a get for a goy for a non-Jewish wife, non-Jews are not related, don't come under the covenant of writing a get. We don't make kedushin under a chuppah for a non-Jew, and we don't use a get as dissolving the marriage, which never happened. So therefore, writing the get for this non-Jewish person is considered the lav minay, not the same ballpark, not the same thing, and therefore it should not be disruptive. How can we say if you write a get for a goyish wife, it is disruptive? And the answer is very simple. The logic is so basic. The Shani answered get, by the get, you tell me that the get for the goy is of no relevance. I'll agree with you. The other is take away the concept that was written for a non-Jewish person. What are you left with? A blank get. And we learned with some apostle. However, kachim, dal chulin, take away the chulin, mine, avalei stoma, then it's stoma kesherim, and it is kosher. So you want to ask me a question, why, if I write a get with the non-Jew in mind, it should be not related, not disruptive? I'll grant you, you're right, it's not disruptive. You know why it's not kosher? Because we don't consider the issue of the goyish wife get written not properly is not good. Okay, good answer. Now we're going to come through with the third question. We're going to build concept upon concept. The concept of the lav loy machriv, if it's not relevant, it's not disruptive, it cannot have an effect. And we're going to add a new concept, something about a get. Something about a stove. We know the laws of Tumah, Tahara, pure and impure, which has no relationship to hygiene. It's just a Toyerdik concept of what's pure and not pure. And we have a concept of a keli, a utensil. And we have also, there is a difference between a earthenware and metal. Earthenware, once it becomes Tomei, can never be brought back up to the state of Torah, even by putting it into a mikveh, as opposed to a metal keli can be brought into the mikveh, and therefore it is called kli shot of a keli, which is dunked, and therefore that could be good. So the first rule is we're learning a difference between kli cheres and kli matlis. Kli cheres is earthenware, kli matlis is metal. Another thing to learn is that we have a concept in the pasuk of, which we have here in the side notes, the whole kli cheres asher yipol memotoichai, any kli cheres which something will fall in, anything kosher b'soichai, so we have twice the word b'soichai, yitmav oisis ishvoiri. From this b'soichai, we're going to learn a new concept, that we have a get, if you have an oven, and you have, the oven is kli cheres, we know cannot come from the outside. Only the cheres, if a dead mouse is on the inside, the oven becomes tummy. More so, from the word toicha, we're going to learn a new concept, that if I suspend, well, first, we're going to learn later on, if I suspend the dead mouse, or we get suspended somehow from a string, from a web, whatever the reason is, if it gets suspended inside the oven, even without touching, it will make the oven tummy. If the cheres is lying in the oven, and a secondary utensil comes into the oven, and the cheres is on the oven, and there's food inside the keli, or vice versa, there's a cheres inside the suspended vessel, and there's food in the oven. The Torah tells you, it shields it, will not become tummy. And we're going to ask the upcoming question. I'll give you the lowdown on it first. We're going to ask, Why? I can understand why a Kli cheres and earthenware will have an effect, but you just told me that if it's not related, it can't have an effect. Granted, a Kli cheres should have an effect, but why would a Kli matris have an effect when it's not? It's a different keli. It's different. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't have any effect. That's what we're going to ask. Rambam Nosech writ as follows: Me Omer Gvidim Marav Chatas Sheshach L'Shemoyle. As we've done this before. The Chatas made which Sheshach for an oile Pesula, but it's Shach L'Shem Chulin by Shech a carbon for a mundane is Keshera Alma. We would see from here, as we said, the Minay relevant to it, Machrov boy disrupts. The Loy Minay not relevant, Loy Machrov does not disrupt. Really, what Tanya we learned by our oven, which I just explained to you. Toichoy, loy toch toichoy, has inside the sherets and mouse in the interior of the oven makes tummy, but not in the interior of the interior, meaning that the keli shields. Short of metal, even if the interior keli is metal, which is not the same, and yet we say it has we see it has an effect. That's the stira. Does it not to have an effect or not have an effect? And here we see the metal has an effect. And we answered, B'shana, Asa Chulin Etel Kodshim, Kemechitza Etel Tanner. Chulin by Kodshim, which you say is not relevant. You know how the relevance translates by an oven? No, the keli is a keli. And not such a big difference whether it's what the material of the keli is. The big difference would be that if I will make a mechitza, just a simple hanger curtain, and that would be not relevant, and that would be have no effect. For example, ma mechitza etz a tanner, just as mechitza in a tanner, loy mahanya leklal, just as mechitza in a tanner, if I said a suspended keli will have an effect, but if I hang a curtain inside the tanner in the oven, I'm not going to say it's going to it's going to divide between the two ends of the tanner. So avchulin to kachim loy mahanile chulin to kachim will not help. So in other words, when I'm telling you that the lavim loy mahana by which we said by carbon that a chatas made for a chulin is no good. You know what this takes the status of a chulin? Not a keli made out of metal, but rather having an artificial curtain hanging in the oven. Let me explain. It's not we learn. If I have an oven and I put bricks, I hunger curtain, and into shares from I have a shares on one side of the oven. The entire oven is tummy. There's no mechitza inside an oven. It's not a thing. It doesn't exist. And more so, kiveris, or additionally, kiveris I have a beehive, which has basically is not fit. It has full of holes and it's been deteriorated. It's been diminished from a keli. If a kuka bakash and I scotch tape with a spit and scotch tape and I put it together, but it's not yet a keli. It has the status of only being a mechitza, being a partition, and shell is the aver a tanner, and this beehive, which is this scotch tape beehive, will be suspended inside the oven. Cheres betoichoi, and there's a cheres, a dead mouse inside the beehive. A tanner tummy because it's only a division, it's only a partition, it's not a keli. So and same thing. Cheres betaner have a cheres in the oven. The food inside the beehive will be tamein, and that's well explained. That the same you're right, exactly the same concept. By carbon, we said a chatas made for another chatas, which is or for shlomim, chatas made for an oil, for example, which is the same. They're both the same ballpark, so it will disrupt. A chatas made for chulin, which for mundane is not the same ballpark, will not disrupt, and it will not cause a problem to be no good. Same thing over here, exact same thing by an oven. If I have the suspended secondary utensil, which we learned will disrupt. If it's a klimat, even if it's a klimatris, it's still a keli, so it's still close enough. It's in the ballpark, it will disrupt. But if I build a partition, no, that's too much. That's not. Or I put in a beehive, which is no longer a keli, just a kind of like a partition. It will not have any effect on it and won't protect because Good. However, we've answered everything. We're done. But we're going to bring Rabbi Eliezer, who has a different opinion, and which will lead to a whole new discussion. Rabbi Eliezer says, no, even when mechitza only, even if only mechitza it is tar. On Rabbi Eliezer kal v'chomer, I'm going to bring you a kal v'chomer in that. If you're telling me, the Torah tells me that a keli will have a mechitza, a keli will be protective, will shield. The inside keli will shield from the outside keli, and mechitza will also shield. And why do I say that? Because in hitzel b'meisa chomer, if the partition protects from Tomei Mace, if Tomei Mace touching a dead person, which is the most severe of all Tomei, and I'm in a room and I have a mechitza from bottom to top, and I have base on one side and a person on the other side, it will protect it. Certainly, it should protect inside an oven, which is much less severe than Tomei. And that's where Blazer said, not just is a klimatris shielding, but a simple partition will also shield. And the Chum answered, no, I don't accept your premise, because turn the page. Loyim Amrit, if you would say the Hitzel b'meis chomer, you know why it protects by mace even though it's chomer, by dead body? Because we find mechitzas in a room. It's normal to have a partition inside a room. You don't have mechitzas, you don't have partitions inside an oven. So therefore, according to Chachamim, I don't accept this kal v'chomer, and therefore this kal v'chomer is actually like a fiatory argument, saying if mechitza will help by dead body, it will certainly help inside an oven. Chachamim say, no, there's no. Your premise is wrong because there's no mechitzas in an oven. So now we answered very well according to Chachamim why they hold the keli yes and keli will shield and mechitza will not shield. But Rabbi Eliezer, remember, how does he learn mechitza does not? The mechitza shields. We just finished learning the loy mach the me'en mach loy and loy mach, which is not similar. It does not have any protection. It's not destructive. It doesn't mean anything. Answer Blazim kal v'chomer kommer. He has a kal v'chomer. I brought you. You're right, but I brought you a kal v'chomer that's saying that it has to work. That the mechitza has to work. If you, the Gemara says, tells you back. If you're telling me a kal v'chomer will work, then a kal v'chomer by chatos in the name of chulin should also work. Also, namalem kal v'chomer kachim chalim kachim. If we chatos with another korban will destroy each other. Chulin like koshkin. Certainly, if I bring a chatas for a mundane chulin, it certainly should destroy it. So therefore, why does it work? And why, according to how will Rabbi Eliezer learn Rav? He says, you know what? Rav's reason is entirely different reason. You know why Rav says that the korban chatas for an oile is destructive, or korban chatas for plain chulin is not destructive? Time Rav to Rabbi Eliezer, not Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Eliezer. When Rabbi Eliezer, my time at the Rav, you know what Rav's reason is? Because I have a pasuk. The pasuk overrules the kal v'chomer. Lo yichalus kachim b'nei Yisrael ash yirim Hashem. What they bring up to Hashem will not cause to be profaned. Kodshim echalim kodshim. Chatas, which is brought for an oile, one kodesh, one holy to another holy, can disrupt it. Ve'ein chulin mechalim kodshim. If it's not holy, it's totally mundane, which is not when its kind, it will not disrupt it. So therefore, you may have a kal v'chomer, but I have a pasuk, and the pasuk trumps the kal v'chomer. Alma osa kro afkim kal v'chomer. In that case, sochaname by the oven, they say bring the pasuk and nifkim kal v'chomer and disrupt the kal v'chomer which you had from mechitza to the interior keli with shields. High toichnot, you're right. So Lezer says I would have used it, but excuse me, the toicha is already preoccupied. This pasuk is teaching me something else. We have a new thing. If you're telling me that Kli cheres from the outside does not make Tomei, what if I have an apple entirely coated in mud, in tit? Will that protect? I lowered that clay covered apple into the oven. Salt that I could have thought. It's acronym. Salt that since it doesn't it's not touching the eviro it shouldn't just touch the in the hanging also not kamashalon that's what the pasuk is for, and therefore the pasuk will not overrule by kal v'chomer, says Rabbi Yezer, and mechitza will also be included in the keli that shields and rabbanon. So how are they going to answer? They say, you know what, I don't need a pasuk to teach me that a clay covered apple is not talking. A clay covered apple is not called a vessel. So therefore, I don't use the plus for that. I have the torch, as we're going to see later on, that teaches me that a keli inside an oven is shields, but only a keli shields and not a mechitza. That is not what is not from its own kind, and therefore it won't be counted. It won't shield. So therefore, so we've answered. You brought on what have we accomplished? You brought me a stira. You tried to say we had a concept the minay machrav, the loy minay loy machrav, meaning that if it's relevant, it's disruptive or effective, and if it's not relevant, it doesn't count at all. So he said, how come you see by the metal keli inside an oven, which at first thought, first glance, we said is not the same as the cheres, therefore it's not the same. Why is it effective and shielding? And we answered you, I'll tell you why. Because keli is considered to be the same status, whether it's metal or cheres. At the end of the day, they're both kalim, and that therefore is effective and shields. If you want to ask me what will not shield, a mechitza, a partition in the oven, that is already not considered anymore part of it. Keli, that goes to the loiminei loy machrav. If it's not of its own kind, it will not have an effect. It won't shield, and won't be good. Okay, so we've answered all three steers, and we've discussed the concept of the minei machrav, loy machrav, that things have an effect only if it's in the same ballpark it's relevant. But if it's not relevant, it won't disrupt. It won't have any effect. It's totally we don't pay it any attention. Now we ask another steer. Rav Yosef bar Rama bar Amma Rama, he has the following steer. We have shini kodesh, a shini bailim. Whether if I changed, I misdirected the kadosh. In other words, I took him chatas and I made it into an oiler. Ashini bailim from one person to another, and the Shani answers as follows. Me Omer Rav, did Rav then truly say? Chatas, this is a new Rav, which actually is called Rava. Chatas sheshachtu l'shem chatas. If I took a chatas and made it for another chatas, it's kosher. But l'shem oile, it's meaning like this: if a person himself, he had a chatas, he had to bring a chatas, for example. Let's say he ate not kosher fats. There's certain fats which are not kosher, and he ate that fat, and he had to bring a chatas. But he made a mistake, and he was bringing it for consuming blood, which also is a sin, and which is why we salt the meat and etc. He brought the chatas for the dam, so we're saying it's still kosher because it's still for a chatas. A chatas for a chatas works. The shem oilam, but for an oilam it's possible. So what do you see from here? Almadalav minei. A chatas for an oilam, that's going to be machrav. But the same chatas to chatas is loy machrav, which is the exact opposite of what we've been saying now. The new thing is we're saying that the minay similar to it is going to be okay, and not similar, that's going to be disruptive. Rav, we just finished saying chatas sheshachta al nishim chatas in pesula, because the same concept. Al mishu mechuyev oile kasher. Al you see the bar minay machrev bo lav minay loy machrev bo. So you see from the second clause that it's relevant then it couldn't disrupt. If it's not relevant, it doesn't disrupt at all. Well, Mashanini answered you, yes, there's a difference between if I change the designation or I change the owner. First time I change the designation, the Torah said shechted for a chatas, and I wanted to shecht for I had to shecht for a fat transgression, and I shechted for a blood transgression. At the end of the day, I had to bring chatas. I brought a chatas, so it doesn't get disrupted. Over here, where I bring the chatas for the wrong person, the chipper olav kosev olav chaverot, and meaning to continue. Chaverot dimi the day the chaver your friend needs similar to you. Shemechuyev kapara kamoisai. If and he also needs to bring a chatas, and for such a case where you need to bring a chatas and your friend needs to bring a chatas, the Torah clearly tells you that is no good. But if your friend needs to bring an oiler and you bring a chatas, you bring it for your friend an oiler, that actually would end up being good. So you have an interesting anomaly, by the way, over here. That if I bring a chatas, my own chatas, for my own oiler, that would be no good. But if I bring my own chatas for my friend's oiler, that would be good. Not that it's good, but it wouldn't be as destructive. And even though it sounds funny, but it's a logic, because my chatas for my chatas is okay, my chatas for my oiler is wrong, and therefore it's no good. But my chatas for my friend's oiler as basically is meaningless, and therefore it doesn't disrupt it. And now we're going to ask one more stira, which is we're going to tell you all the rules of the oven. Rav Chavivi Rama Shini Bailam at Toich Toicha. The change of Bailam, the rules of change of ownership change. Mashani answers as follows. Imi Omer Rav, Chatas Sheshachta Al Mishu Mechuyev Chatas. Chatas first, now the Chatas Pesula. Al Mishu Mechuyev Oile is Keshere. Did you tell me that the Chatas for a Chatas is possible, but a Chatas for an oil is kosher? Alma to parenting. Dimene Machruba. Dilav Mene Loy Machruba is what we're saying. Relevant is kosher, is disruptive. Not relevant is not disruptive. But I'm going to ask you the same question we asked earlier. If you're telling me that it's only disruptive when it's similar, but not similar is not disruptive, why is a metal keli shielding inside the cheres oven when it's not the same? And I answered you, Mishana Arba Toicha Ksiva, the pasuk which says, the pasuk which says cheres asher yipol mem el toichoi, and it says twice the word toichoi, and the word toichoi itself could have written toich, and it says toichoi the extra vav. So we have four limudim, and the four limudim are as follows. Toich toichoi, toich toichoi. Had, as we see in Rashi, the gufa that the kli cheres in earthenware, that the food becomes tomei just being suspended on the inside, not even touching anything. That it becomes tomei on the inside, and this basically what we're learning is that the kli cheres only becomes tomei from the inside and not from the outside. And then and telling you, as we said, that the keli, the inside keli shields, even if it's a metal. Because I know you tell me, I don't need you to tell me that the cheres shields, because the cheres, as we said, can never become coming from the outside, only from the inside. So what does it teach me? That even a klishatav, even a metal keli, which normally would become coming from the outside, and if it's suspended inside the kli cheres, then you have a specific ruling that even a kli matzkes, even a metal, will shield. So you see, specifically, Torah told you that the keli inside the keli is shield, even if it's made out of metal, and that is not called different, and therefore it will be will be effective, even though it's not of its own kind. As you said yesterday, you want to know what will not shield according to Chachamim? Partitions won't shield, but the metal keli will shield. And that is the end of today's daf. Quickly, as a summary, we discussed proving that a get, it has to be specifically aimed. We discussed the second stira, bringing out, developing the concept that the Minei Machrib, the Loy Machrib, the only for it, the proper, if it's relevant, has an effect, but something totally off the mark will not have an effect to it. And then we brought down the third concept where we discussed the whole idea of a tanner, explaining various. First, we discussed what is this shielding keli inside, whether it's a metal keli or even controversial, even standard partition. And we also explained how it's how the four toiches work, and that is today's daf. Thank you. If you want any questions, daf in hand at gmail.com. Have a good day.